Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Germinator. For those of you who are joining for the very first time, my name is Dr. Alon Eisenstein. I'm an assistant professor of teaching at the School of Engineering at UBC Okanagan, and my focus is on technology, entrepreneurship, and professional skills. The Germinator is a bi-weekly guest speaker series, fireside chat-esque minus the fire. And I bring interesting people to talk about their experience in commercialization, innovation, entrepreneurship, and all that jazz. And this is the third year in running doing it. And so I've met lots of great people in the past and looking forward to new great people in the future. So thank you for joining us today. And before introducing today's guest, I'd like to, of course, acknowledge the land of the Seal Okanagan people that we are meeting virtually on. But as far as I can tell, everybody who's in the virtual room is also on Seal territory. And because we are just a day before Halloween, I thought it would be appropriate to recognize. In Kelowna, we call it the Ogopogo, but in the language of the Syilx, which is in Syilxchen, the name is actually Nechachaitko, and where Ogopogo means very little. As far as I can tell, there's a 1920s song about the Ogopogo in English that I don't even know where that came from. But the Syilx name, the Chachaitko, is literally translated as the sacred being of the water. And so this is part of the connection to the land and recognizing really the importance of water, and not just the lake. It's not just the sacred being of Lake Okanagan, but the watershed in its entirety. So holistically, recognizing the importance of water, taking care of the water, and the fact that water takes care of all living things. And so part of the work that I do reconciliation wise is acknowledging where and when we are meeting. And this seems appropriate for being on SEAL territory and just before Halloween when we all talk about monsters. Although, again, this is not a monster in the sense of SEAL tradition and ceremonial meaning. So today, I'm super excited to talk to Tyson Percival, local in Kelowna and president and founder of Sync Robotics. I did do a bit of a Google search about Tyson and was surprised to see how very little I could find about online. You're doing a good job staying very little footprint on the digital world. But just a quick tidbit today, I guess we're going to talk mostly about your experience with creating and running Sync Robotics in Kelowna. But in your past, you were director at Sunfield Energy. You were an operation engineer at Hybrid Elevator, a design engineer at Command Industries, and there's a few other manufacturing and design positions you had in the past. And so I think what I've found over the years, the most interesting question I have for people like yourself is what were you thinking quitting a paid job and going from being an employee to an employer? And I think that transition in itself is what the reason the Germinator exists, is to have these conversations, because I've met so many people, students, faculty, professionals who say, like, how do you get started? How do you even do that? So I'm looking forward to our chat about you and Sync Robotics and everything in between. So let me stop the sharing and welcome you again. Hi, Tyson. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it. This is exciting. Haven't done anything quite like this before, so it's fun.
Oh, excellent. And I think we can get a sneak preview behind you to the shop floor. So we might see some robots moving around.
Yeah, there's some robots. We got an autonomous vehicle that's carrying around 6,000 pounds of plywood. There's a few things going on back there. I set up my camera this way because I found that in a lot of our sales presentations, we were spending, upwards of 10 minutes trying to sort of build credibility. you see someone's face and they could be in their basement. And so we'd show videos and really try and really start with something to build that foundation that we do actually do projects and we're working on stuff. And then I just kind of realized, hey, I'll just aim my camera out the window, and then we don't talk about it. We just cut right to the content, and people usually pick up on that. Oh yeah, I see there's a robot moving around. Oh yeah, yeah, we're working on a bunch of stuff. Anyway, back to your stuff, and it just it saves us a ton of time and works really well. So
Yeah. And I'm gonna circle back later because I think you touch on a really important point on how do you build rapport? How do you get people to trust you? Because it's so important. But maybe kind of a few steps back. Can you tell us just a bit about, I guess, yourself, the before and after Sync Robotics? Like what was your general employment, professional trajectory, and before going to Sync Robotics?
sure, yeah. So I'm actually originally from the coast. Grew up on a small island, Quadra Island, near Campbell River, and lived in Victoria for a while. Worked in the energy sector a little bit, and decided to go back to school actually when I was closer to, I guess, 27 or so for engineering. Did engineering at a U.S. school. Really wanted to get into aerospace because jets are cool, and kind of realized about halfway through that for Canadians, there's not a lot of really tangible opportunities in that sector. It's very tightly controlled from a technology standpoint. A lot of the stuff is adjacent to military applications, so it's very tightly regulated in the U.S. for foreign nationals. So switched to mechanical, did some. My focus was air breathing jet propulsion still, and did a little bit of robotic stuff, but wasn't really that interested in it, to be honest. And ended up getting a co-op at a local company there that had it was a on the manufacturing team. And so I thought, I'm going in and gonna design products, but it was not that at all. It was, designing tools and fixtures and workflows and that sort of thing, laying out machines and, how do we do this in an efficient way? And I found that it was probably the most satisfying thing I've done. Just loved that idea of putting these systems together. So came back to Canada and worked at a couple local companies here doing more sort of conventional design engineering. But always kind of had this in the back of my head that I'd love to build systems, and kind of kicked around a lot of ideas of things that I thought made commercial sense, but really didn't. And eventually got it to the point where um, I felt that there was a big enough opportunity that it was worth trying it full time. So yeah, I quit my job and was off at KUKA Robotics within 2 weeks or so of that, um, and going to trade shows and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say I've mostly an engineering background, but have always loved just sort of putting pieces together, and that's kind of what drew me to this line of work.
And so maybe I guess as you may remember, my background is not in engineering, although I teach in the school and I teach design. Um, but maybe what's the difference in your mind, like the biggest, I guess, mental difference in because you're kind of differentiating going from being an engineer to designing systems and workflows. Like how different is that in how you process things and how you go about doing stuff?
Um, I mean, I think it is part of a type of engineering, if you want to call it process engineering, or people have different definitions or different subgenres of things. But um, I think it's just looking at the whole picture. It's more of like you're kind of more of a general contractor, I would say, where you're kind of putting together a lot of pieces and resources, and there's a lot of creativity. There is a lot of detailed design work as well, but it's really focused on the big picture. That's the main thing is what is this going to look like from a very 10,000 foot level, and that's I think kind of what drew me to it. It actually was a YouTube video And I'd seen some of the stuff in at work when I was doing my co-ops, but there was a particular video game controller that had just come out, and the company that was making it posted this YouTube video, and it showed how they manufacture it. And it's kind of like, how it's made, or one of those factory shows. But they showed that the video starts with just this empty space, this giant empty warehouse. And then there's a time lapse of all the equipment going in one go, like just one shot. They just fill the room full of equipment. And it's at some random, office park outside of Chicago. And then they're making these things from scratch, everything, the plastic molding and the electrical assembly and putting it in a box, and the whole thing is just choreographed out. And it kind of forced me to realize, like, somebody had to design that. Somebody had to like put all those pieces together and sit down and whiteboard this out. Like, how is this even going to work? And the fact that that could just be deployed anywhere, that could go in Chicago, or it could go in China, or it could go in New Zealand, or what, that really drew me to it. Um, so yeah, it's kind of more that creative high level focus, I think, is really what's the thing that I enjoy the most.
Pretty cool. So we can put you on the books for somebody who made their career choices off of a YouTube video.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Hashtag advice. Definitely see something cool on YouTube. That's it. You know,
Okay.
no, don't
No,
do that. But
no to parents. Don't
yeah.
restrict screen time.
Yeah.
Encourage YouTube. Um, so I guess kind of transitioning to sync robotics, and maybe after that I'll kind of see if anybody want to ask any question based on our conversation so far. Um, so I kind of teased you on the fact that you went from being an employee to starting your own thing. Um, and again, kind of just context, and I think I shared with you the reason why I call this series the Germinator is inspired by this concept of germination, that a seed needs to germinate. Essentially from the outside, it looks like it's not doing anything because it's not growing, but germination is an internal process that prepares the seed to break free and start growing when the conditions are right. And so this idea that you go through an internal process that can take anywhere from months to years until the conditions are right for you to start creating that thing that we call a company. Um, so from your experience, like how long were you playing in your head about, I'm gonna start my own company, before you
Um,
got there?
I think it's always, kind of been in the background, just because there's a few people in my family that have been done some pretty cool stuff with their own companies. But in terms of sort of having a little bit of direction and kind of thinking, I'd like to take this on maybe in the future, it's probably about 2.5 years, I think. From that, like, getting a domain name. And it's like, oh, I got a domain name. Now it's real, and then it's not. So a lot of those domains expired. And yeah, it was a bit of a process. Um, a big thing for me, just sort of on a personal note, was having kids. And when we had our first kid, it was kind of like, I don't know, it just forces you into that headspace where you're like, what am I doing over the next 20 years? Is what I'm doing now the trajectory that I want? And kind of refresh that in a really active way. So that's when I started to work on it a little bit more. And most of my ideas were pretty bad market fit, pretty unsuccessful concepts. And so it just had to kind of churn until it got to the point where I knew enough about it that I could kind of see the market opportunity, and also just with my career and my job that I was doing, it was a good time to kind of draw a line under something and say, okay, this has kind of run its course, and there's probably not a next step here. So yeah.
I'm gonna pause here and see if anybody wants to ask any question from the audience who's so far been listening very patiently. And I know some of the folks here have chatted with me about entrepreneurship at different levels. No, I don't see anybody unmuting. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you, I guess maybe kind of chronologically speaking, and this is kind of what I do in my entrepreneurship class. And I always tell students, your first idea is gonna be bad. So you have to you have to go through it and figure it out and move to the next idea. And I know that a lot of people that come to me with, oh, I have an idea, but I can't tell you. Um,
Hmm.
how did you know your ideas were bad? Like, what do you do to make sure that before you quit your day job and walk away from salary, like what do you need to do to make sure that the idea is worth actually doing that?
Um, yeah, I don't remember exactly what all the process was, but I think the most foundational thing is figuring out if someone's actually going to pay you for that thing at the price that it's going to cost, whatever that is, if it's a service or a product or something. Um, I think as sort of, technical and intelligent people, it's easy for us to imagine that we understand this market that maybe we don't, or we understand this product that we, just thought of last week. And you got to sort of absorb the fact that you're probably not the customer for this. I mean, you maybe are. It's possible. Sometimes people, they'll work in an industry for a while and they really know it backwards and forwards, and they would be the customer for that thing that doesn't exist. And those people probably can really hit the ground running when they get kicked off. But especially if you're coming out of school, um, not a lot of career experience maybe. Um, you're not the target audience, and you probably don't really know a lot about how those customers are making decisions. So you got to get somehow figure out a way to get some contact with someone that could be a customer or knows a customer, or can give you some advice and kind of poke holes in your idea. Um, Good ideas are kind of a dime a dozen sometimes. Like just having oh, it'd be cool if there was a thing. Yeah, definitely there would be. But frequently when you've got I don't know how many billion people in the world, all a lot of them contributing to new ideas and new products. If what you're thinking of doesn't exist, there's a pretty good chance that there's a reason, there's either a technical reason or a commercial reason or whatever, that it's difficult to get it to market. And that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't do it, but it may be more involved than you think. So, for me, I kind of had this idea of, building robots, and then um, realized like how far ahead the commercial stuff was compared to anything that I could build. What a bad idea it would be to buy a robot made in Kelowna. And looked at like some low cost used robots and bringing those in and a lot of stuff like that. And you pretty quickly realize in talking to people that like that's no one wants to save a bit of money on the robot for a system, because the system cost is 10x the cost of the robot. So saving this marginal amount to potentially create a lot of unreliable issues, no one wants that. In my mind, not as a someone that's going to buy a manufacturing system. Oh yeah, it's lower price equals more appealing, right? But that really wasn't the case. So yeah, it was a process for sure.
So did you talk to people and said, I have this idea, would you pay me?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, I was starting to sort of prospect for stuff a while before I actually officially quit, um, and didn't want to do that until I felt like there was a business case there. I also looked at like the business that we do here. This isn't something we invented. This is a style of business that's relatively commonplace in a lot of areas. What we're doing with it is a little bit unique in some ways, but what I looked at was in terms of the market for Canada specifically, per province, what kind of manufacturing dollar output there is in Ontario and Quebec and Alberta and BC, controlling out oil and gas and a few things that don't really have the same um, little bit of a different industry, and then looked at who's doing this in these regions, and pretty quickly realized with a very simple Excel sheet that in this region there's nobody that's really capturing the market effectively. So that was like the main thing I could focus on and say, hey, okay, this is a thing that exists. There are people that have engaged to go forward with a project potentially, or at least talk about it, and and there's some external factors showing that this would be a good market opportunity in this area. Um, if we were in Detroit, Michigan, this would, like, it's so saturated there that this wouldn't really make sense what we're doing. So that was part of it as well.
So does that mean that most of your clients are local geographically?
Western Canada, yeah. So we'll go to like Winnipeg. We are doing some more stuff into the U.S. now, but that's just kind of organically come about based on our experience and some of the other stuff we've done locally. So started out very like BC focused, and then kind of went from there.
Okay. And you mentioned before about creating trust, building trust, a rapport with your clients. So before you have your first client, you can't say, I've done this before.
Hmm.
How do you convince the first person to actually pay you to do something you say you can, but I mean, you don't have the receipts for? Like what?
That's a great question. Yeah, and it's really difficult. I mean, the easy path is just be dishonest, but it depends on whether you think that's something you want to do. You're okay with that if you think that's a good place to start. I personally don't, and it took about close to 2 years before we had a real order for a substantial system, and a lot of that time was spent building that business case. Like, we haven't done this, but look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And these are the partners we work with, these are the vendors we work with, these are the resources we have. And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of people, we had early customers that kind of started to realize, like, oh no, this is sort of R&D, and they said no, no, like, not interested, and that's fine. That's a totally reasonable reaction to that. But for us, for me, I think we've been usually pretty upfront with everybody that this is a new thing, and some people are comfortable with that and some people aren't. But if you can find the customers that are, and they understand that this is a new thing, and they're okay with that, then you're going to have a really good relationship. If you don't, then you're going to be awake all night waiting for them to show up at your door and ask to see all the stuff that you've been telling them that you've been doing. um, it was interesting. The first major project we did, we had a kind of a little leased office that wasn't very nice, and then we kind of had a sublease of a little mechanical space that was the size of like a garage, and they never came down. No one ever wanted to come see it, and I thought that was surprising, and it kind of showed that if you were ethically okay with being very dishonest, then you probably could do okay. But not the path that I wanted to take.
Yeah, and I think there's a common misconception of what fake it till you make it means, right? I think we see that people say fake it till you make it means be dishonest, as opposed to saying that
No.
have big ambitions, right? Like, yeah, present yourself as what you want to be, not who you are, but it doesn't mean that you want to be dishonest and
Yeah,
pretend.
I think if you're dealing with sophisticated customers, which we are on our business, I think you can show your plan. If your plan is so unconvincing that no customers are going to go along with it, then you probably have a bad plan and it may not work. So, you want to be able to, if you can't get anyone else to think that it's viable, then it might not be. Um, and you should probably try and dial that in a little bit. So, one of the big things for us was working with vendor partners. So, like, we don't build robots here. utilize robots, and we build a lot of custom machinery and software and things to go along with them. But we brought in the vendors. We went to the largest market share industrial robotics company in the world and said, hey, we want to take on Western Canada. Nobody's doing it effectively. Here's what we want to do, but we need support. And they said, sure. So they came out, they flew out a bunch of times, sent people out here, hosted us, tons of free training, and then we could bring them in with us. So we go to these presentations. We're like, hey, we got the guys from the robotics company, and they've both got 30 years experience, and we're asking them what they think too. And that was a big part of building that confidence. Is it's not just like me and just the guy with glasses says that it's going to work. It's we kind of put together a team. But part of that was, like I was saying before, for our planning, like we needed to feel that we had those resources, right? Because we get halfway through the project and we don't know anybody to ask for help, then we're putting ourselves in a pretty dicey position.
So you mentioned before that it took you 2 or 2.5 years to kind of think about the sync robotics business before you actually, I don't remember, before quitting or before starting it, at least in parallel to being employed. But then when you say 2 years to get your first, again, significant order of a system, that was after, I'm
Yeah,
assuming. So that's already close to 5 years running since you say, oh, I want to
yeah.
do this. And I think you started 2017, so it's 7 years now. I guess if you think of what you know today about the business you're in, is there anything that strikes you as surprising or unexpected that you couldn't have imagined 7 years ago, or not even seven? It'll be 9 years ago.
Um, yeah, I mean, 9 years ago, I had no idea. 7 years ago, it was kind of taking shape. And then kind of in that time, I think it's pretty similar. I think probably the most surprising thing is how fast it's gone and how many opportunities there are in that business for, it's a relatively mature market. Like people have been building industrial robots since the 1970s. I meet people constantly in the industry that are like, oh yeah, we built this similar kind of thing, or we try to do that or whatever. And then I think about it, and it's like when I was like getting my driver's license or something, and it's like I didn't even know that this kind of thing existed. So um, that's probably the most surprising thing is how far it's come. Like this year, I actually got so Fanuc, they're the world's largest robot manufacturer, industrial robot manufacturer. They invented the servo motor, which is like a type of electric motor that really allows for a lot of industrial controls. They invited me to be on their industry advisory board on a management level to deliver feedback to their CEO in the US. And there's 10 or 12 people in that group. So most of the other people that are there representing companies are in the sort of 500 million to 3 billion a year in sales. And then there's, me, it's like, hey, we just bought a new forklift. That's exciting. And, everybody else has got all their acquisitions and they just built 3 new facilities and stuff. And so that has been very surprising, how fast that's all kind of come together and some of the opportunities.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here again and see if anybody has any questions, because I don't know about them, but I'm hearing lots of interesting things.
Follow-ups.
I mean,
Okay, go for one.
yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a bit muffled. I don't know if your microphone is a bit, should be closer.
Can it be? Yeah, I'm just trying to be as loud as I can using the public space. But sorry. But actually, going back to something that you mentioned about identifying in the Western Canada for having for the companies which are doing these basically the companies that provide information robotics. I'm wondering When did that occur? When did you notice about that need? And but did something trigger some, thought, okay, so I because your boy, they have to take the hand, the money.
I Tyson, were you able to catch the question? Because
I missed a fair bit of it, but it sounded like, yeah, it's sort of cutting out and there's a kind of a weird feedback there, but it sounded like the basic question was, how did I sort of figure out that there was an opportunity for this service? Is that kind of, yeah, okay, okay.
Yes, in Western Canada. Yeah.
In Western Canada specifically. Yeah. So, yeah, in terms of understanding this market, part of it was working in a manufacturing facility to just kind of see how things actually get put together. And then, yeah, some research on my part. And then, yeah, I just started, I literally went through and just Googled like industrial robotics Ontario. And I just I made a huge list of every single company that I could find in Ontario that did something that I seemed to be connected. And then I went through and did the same thing for Manitoba. I did the same thing for Quebec, just to collect all the data. And then I was able to just look at the sort of manufacturing uh, dollar numbers, which you can get through StatsCan, to kind of, and then correlate those and just, I could see pretty quickly that there didn't seem to be a lot of companies doing this thing in the area relative to the dollar value of the manufacturing that's happening. So obviously Ontario and Quebec have a tremendous manufacturing base, but they also proportionally had a lot more people that were um, doing this work. And so it kind of came down to like, it's almost like a GDP, but it's like a, number of integrators per $1 million of manufacturing output or whatever. There's some ratio there. I mean, it's just something I made up, but it kind of showed that there was something different about the West, that there was an opportunity there, and it's very focused on that specific opportunity, that specific industry. Um, and then, getting started, like that wasn't enough to like really get going, and getting going for the first 2 years was really a lot of just going out and talking to people, having a bit of time to drive to factories and potential customers and try and understand where the gaps were in what they could find. And so a lot of that validation was still happening after it started, for sure. I kind of had some drop dead dates, some off ramps of like, hey, if we can't, get a pretty interested customer above this sort of dollar value by this time, then this is probably not going to work out. And then, okay, we get there, okay, we need to sell something to one of these people by about this time, and had a bit of a tiered approach to it. So, some deadlines for myself to it's easy to think that your idea is going to be successful and just keep putting good money after bad. And so it's actually, I would say it's probably more my wife was enforcing this, like, hey, by, whatever, March, like we need to like know that you can get to this point. Otherwise, maybe take another crack at this in 10 years kind of thing. Because we had bills to pay and little kids and all that stuff, right?
yeah, that's excellent. And having somebody to hold you accountable is really important, right? Like,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
so I forgot to ask, but as far as I can tell, is Sync Robotics your idea like as a sole entrepreneur, as a sole founder, or was that a
Um,
team effort?
it was at the very start, and I had a colleague friend that I'd worked with a little bit at two previous jobs that he worked somewhere else, and he's able to give me some thoughts and ideas on it a little bit, and so it was just me for the first year or so, and then after we kind of like I could show that, hey, there's something happening. If we had a little bit of money, we could do more, do this thing. And so I got two business partners at that time, and they kept working their jobs for another 2 or 3 years after that. But they were able to chip in a bit and get us, so we could lease a truck and hire an employee and all that kind of stuff, kind of get it kicked off. So first year was like credit cards and paternity leave, and then after that was there's a little bit of momentum. So yeah,
And
so we got two business partners. Both of them work here now, so they're both pretty key parts of the company as well.
okay. So it sounds like at least for the first year, you're holding the reins on your own.
Yeah.
And maybe, I guess, again, and all the questions I have are really based on your personal experience, and different people have different experiences. And I've seen founding teams where there's like 5 people and they just all jump together in at the same time. But your experience reminds me a question I had from a grad student who was basically saying, well, I'm an engineer. Um, should I start the company myself? Like, I guess there was another engineer. So 2 engineers, should we start it ourselves, or do we need to get a business partner first, somebody who knows business first? And so I'm curious what would be, I know what advice I gave them, and it would probably be closer to the way that you ended up doing your own thing. Um, but what would be your advice on somebody that's thinking about idea, but they have, again, just the engineering experience or knowledge and are a bit anxious about the business side?
Yeah, I mean it's a big topic. I probably am the worst on our team for like diligent accounting. But it's a very important part of business, and it's really important to have partners that can kind of augment your strengths and weaknesses, so you get a more well-rounded team. But I would say that like you got to cut really fast to the viability of the thing. Like that's what it is like, is this viable? And if not, what else are you going to do? And it's anybody can put together a budget, like a budget of, probably what's this going to cost with a little bit of research. Anybody can make a cash flow forecast. Hey, per month, we got this much money coming in, we got this much money going out. Here's a graph of where we run out of money. I think anybody can do that stuff, and I think it's really important. But my personal take is that like you gotta, before you put too much time and energy into it and get too many people's dreams all wrapped up in it, you gotta focus on like, is this a thing that the market is going to support? And I think most people should be able to do that. One or two people can kind of get a better sense of whether it makes sense or not. And it is going to take time to do that. It's not just, hey, I Googled this thing and there's somebody else selling it for a bunch of money, therefore mine will work too. It might take a while.
And so to kind of trying to find out is it's viable, I guess, a common rule of thumb that people throw out, and I use that as well, is, talk to 100 people. Like, did you actually talk to 100 people with some version of your idea to see, is it worth investing another dollar in this?
Mm-hmm.
So what has been your experience? Like, what's the scale of the number of people you got in front of, in person or virtually, to check whether your idea is worth anything?
It probably wasn't 100, but it was a fair bit. I would say, as far as companies go, it was probably 50 or less. But like I just got to the point where I would go on Google Maps and just look at like an industrial park in Langley or whatever, and like all these buildings look like they could be factories. And then I'd go there with my car and I'd just drive in front of the building. What is it? Okay, look them up. Yeah, they make something. Okay, I'm going to go in and try and talk to them. And sometimes I get kicked out. Sometimes they won't answer. And then other times people are like, oh, robots, interesting. Hey, I'm going to go grab this other guy. Let's go sit down and talk about it. And then we talk, and I kind of say some stuff and they're like, oh no, we wouldn't be interested in that. Oh, okay, thanks. And then it's like, and then the next one, their neighbors, okay, yeah, and you kind of know a little bit more and you can keep working on it. But there's a lot of that, a lot of talking to people that can network with other people to get me in front of potential customers and just kind of shopping out ideas. And once in a while, people say things in a meeting that just really informs your product focus. So someone for us personally once in a meeting said, um, this isn't going to be like a black box, is it? And like I didn't know what they were talking about, but I was like, oh, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, we've bought this other equipment and the software is all locked down and we can't access it, and so we can't fix it, and we're running overnight and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and we can't adjust any of the settings, and they want to charge us to connect to it, and then of course I was like, oh no, it wouldn't be. But then now I'm like, hey, that's a thing. That's a thing that people are having a problem with. So then I can go to customers and say, hey, yeah, like, do you guys have any equipment that it's been really black box and that's been a challenge for you? Oh yeah, we hate that. It's like, all right. So then there's something of value that I've learned, and I never would have understood that unless I A, worked at that specific facility overnight, or B, had that conversation and just had that data point pop out of nowhere. Um, yeah, yeah. So it's a really important part of that process.
So get in the car, go where people are at, and knock on the door.
Yeah,
And
don't send emails. Go talk to people. Go get out there. Go see what's going on. See if you can get get a tour, get a something. Go
yeah.
talk to people face to face. I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you, but I get so many cold emails about things, and it's like it's not. There's no response from me and probably a million other people they sent it to, and they're not getting any information. They're just getting a rejection, and that's nothing. That doesn't help. You got to go and have a conversation with somebody and understand why they don't like what you're offering, or maybe they have an idea to make it better. Say, hey, yeah, this is cool, but do you guys have this other thing? And you go, oh, maybe we should, and kind of take that and go from there.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here and see if anybody has any follow-up questions. And I know that I've encouraged a lot of my students in the past to pick up a phone and call people and not just wait for an email response that will
Yeah,
probably not gonna come back ever.
yeah.
Is there anyone else there that wants to ask any question?
Sure, I'll quickly ask a question. Very nice listening to your talk, and very enlightening. I'm a prof here. I used to work in industry. And what you're saying rings very true. You really need to talk to people to figure out what products are available, or what you could even do. And I'm not sure you're going to be able to tell me what I'm asking you. I'm really quite curious. From what I see in the background, it seems you're a system integrator for robotics.
Yes.
And is the only advantage that you have location, or are you also different in what you actually do compared to other system integrators?
Both. So what we do is different. The reason why we do what we do is because of location. So we focused on creating solutions for customers that we could go drive to and work with. And then that's allowed us to take those things that we've learned, which are actually in some cases pretty unique, and bring that to a larger customer base.
Okay, so you're building kind of you're developing something for one customer, but then you're able to spread that to many others. So you're kind of
Exactly.
using this as a germination process.
Exactly.
So okay.
Yeah. Yes. A big part of it too is like we kind of augment our customer teams. We're not coming in and we've got a piece of paper and here's the widget maker 9000 and it costs this much and it runs at this speed. It's more of a collaborative process where we can work with them to say, like, what are you guys struggling with, and what can we do to improve the situation here, and what are some challenges that you're seeing, and we kind of work with them. So by the end of the project, once the system is built, we have a pretty understanding of their struggles specifically with that company or that site, but also the industry in general and the process. And so then we can kind of build on that and reach out a little bit further. And when we're going, like there's a system in the shop right now that's going to Indiana, which is fairly far away, American Midwest. But so we're not the local guys by far. We are by far the farthest people that bid on that job. But we have there's some parts of our experience that really resonated with them. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that we want to work with you guys. We couldn't have got there without the local stuff, but you can kind of build on it.
Right. So I remember I worked in a relatively large company, and we had suppliers that basically provided technical consulting for us in different products. And and I understand now, having talked to other people, that they basically sold us something that they said they just made for us, but it was really made for somebody else. So they basically resold the same product twice or maybe 3 times, also took half of our knowledge and resold it to other companies. How do companies feel about that? Working back then, we were pretty annoyed, and we were getting very careful not to actually do that, because there's a little bit of an advantage in having processes that work better. And if that is then sold to somebody else, that's just no fun.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's something we deal with pretty often. So I would say that, I wasn't there, but it sounds like the main problem there is that they weren't honest with you guys about
No, they were not.
Right. And that's the thing that really simplifies it is we're pretty upfront with what we've done and what we're working on, and we bring customer. We have a customer tour going on right now, showing, hey, we're working on this and that, and some customers are like, yeah, great, cool, yeah, we want you to build this thing for us, and it's very specific for that site. Like it only fits between these 2 machines. That it's the only place in the world that's exactly like that, and that's what they want. We have other customers that do have those unique developments based on their industry and their industry experience that do give them a competitive advantage. And so we have some agreements with those customers that we will not market that to anyone else in their industry. But that's because we're upfront about it. So, we actually have one customer that we have a upcoming project, and we have a commercial agreement that it's just for them. And we have other systems for them that are fabulous, but they don't care. Like it's, yeah, whatever. You guys want to sell that somewhere else, go for it, because it's not a big driver for them.
Right.
So yeah, it's just communication, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it really soared the relationship we had with that company.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, no, I could see that, and we've had those concerns come in, like, hey, so we work with you guys on this for a year or two, and they get the Rev A that works okay, but it's got some glitches, and then their competitors come in a year later and they get the Rev B with all the knowledge, and it's all tuned up, and they can get it twice as fast for
And
probably
for
less
half the
money.
price.
Yeah.
So very cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm mindful of the time, so we only have a few minutes left. So why don't I do so I guess I promised I'll stop before the end of the hour if anybody wants to have any questions that are a bit more personal and won't be part of the recording. But before doing that, and before kind of thanking Tyson for his time, I do want to just give a quick shout out for the next speaker. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to have Jill Ingverson from NRC IRAP as a guest. And people in Kelowna in the tech sector would probably know Jill, and she works on supporting small, medium-sized companies with funding and advice and consulting and access to, again, their subsidized salaried positions and whatnot. But one of the most interesting things that I learned about her is that she has experience working with Marvel. Her work with entertainment technology, which one was that? I forgot. Unreal Engine. She worked with Unreal Engine, and that led to Avengers Endgame and a few other big score ticket items. She also worked in other entertainment companies and Autodesk. So she has a wealth of interesting experience that I think people would have fun hearing about. And a very different perspective, because again, she would be coming from not just an entrepreneur, but somebody with lots of knowledge on innovation and technology, now in a position of working for government to support more innovation and more technology growth specifically in our region. So looking forward to talking to Jill. And so I guess with that, I'm gonna formally thank you, Tyson, for joining me and the small audience that we have online, and sharing some of your experience of starting Sync Robotics and just going through that transition and what it takes. With that, I will stop the recording, but we'll linger just a few more minutes if anybody want to have any more off-record type of questions that we can benefit from your presence. So thank you again, and looking forward to seeing more people next week. Sorry, 2 weeks from now for the next meeting with Jill.